Hello and welcome to the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC's November webinar, How to Make Stewardship Part of Your Organization's Mission. My name is Ryan Stewart. I'm facilitating today's panel discussion. I'm speaking to you from the Comox Valley on Vancouver Island. I'd like to acknowledge that I have the privilege to live, work, and play in the traditional and unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. Thanks for being here today. I'm excited for today's presentation because I think everyone who recreates outdoors should be taking part in some kind of stewardship effort. I hope this webinar inspires some amazing projects, big and small. I'll get into that in a second, but first, a little housekeeping. We are recording this webinar and we'll share a link to it later this week, along with many of the resources and assets mentioned by the panelists. At the end of the webinar, there'll be a short survey to help us make these events better. Please stick around to answer just a couple of quick questions. Here's today's webinar itinerary. We'll start with a short introduction, then each panelist will speak for about 5 or 10 minutes, and we'll move to an open question and answer session. We want this webinar to be as useful as possible to you. So if we don't cover any aspects that you're hoping to get answered or have any curious questions, please ask them and we'll do our best to answer. You should see a Q&A icon right near the bottom of your window. Please write your questions in here. If it's something quick and easy, one of the panelists might have a chance to answer it during the panel discussion. Otherwise, we'll wait until all the panelists have spoken before answering the questions. All right, this webinar is part of the mandate of the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. The council represents more than 80 organizations and approximately 100,000 British Columbians. It's an incredibly diverse group. Hunting and fishing federations, rock climbing, mountain biking clubs, dirt bike and off-road vehicle associations, hiking and bird watching groups. What they share is a love for outdoors and wild places and recreation. The council unites these voices in conversation with governments and other stakeholders and provides resources and learning opportunities. A link to one of these was included in the invitation to this webinar, and that was the Stewardship Inspiration Guide. I had the privilege of authoring this report for the Outdoor Recreation Council. And the goal of the Stewardship Inspiration Guide is to encourage the Outdoor Recreation Council's members and anyone else that reads it to take on stewardship roles. We want people to realize that stewardship is broad, projects are doable by everyone, and the benefits of these efforts are holistic. I opened the Stewardship Guide by defining what stewardship is, and I'll do the same here. So the dictionary definition is the job of taking care of something or an ethical value that embodies the responsible planning and management of a resource. If we take a step back to the membership of the Outdoor Recreation Council and its values and interests, I think we can refine our definition to mean an ethical value to be responsible care for wild places and natural resources. Every group and individual may have their own unique missions and priorities, but I think it's safe to say everyone interested in outdoor recreation shares a desire to preserve their playground for the next generation. And acting on that desire, I think, is what stewardship is all about. So it could be something big, like the Electrify the Mountain project in Kimberley, BC. There are several community groups are working together to embrace the electric future of recreation. It can have many benefits, like here, this is the BC Snowmobile Federation's working with the provincial government in the Southern Selkirk Mountains and also in the Peace region. On these collaborative efforts, they allow snowmobiling to continue without impacting endangered caribou herds. It's a really innovative project. You can read more about it in the Stewardship Inspiration Guide. It can also be simple things like removing invasive species, like the volunteers for the BC Marine Trail are doing here. Beach, river cleanups, trail maintenance, habitat enhancement projects, visitor management efforts, really anything that leaves the natural world in a better condition is stewardship. And I think that hints at that holistic benefit I mentioned a few minutes ago. Obviously, stewardship efforts focus on improving wild places and natural spaces by directly improving the habitat or indirectly by controlling human impacts. There's often a selfish human element benefiting the outdoor recreation interests of the group or the people doing the work. And I think there's another one, there's the altruistic benefit. Studies show that volunteering makes us feel good. And that's especially true when it's for projects that we will know that projects that we know benefit others. Anytime I've chipped in, whether on a trail maintenance effort or just picking up garbage, I feel a little pulse of good feelings. I'm sure most of our panelists or anyone that's worked on volunteer efforts feel these same sentiments. Speaking of the panelists, let me introduce them. So we have Kevin Esklin, is a regional manager of the Recreation Sites and Trails BC in the Southern Interior. He oversees a staff of about 14 people who work on the ground in the Okanagan, Shuswap, Columbia, and Kootenay areas. He's been with the Recreation Branch for 17 years. He works out of the Cranbrook office and he lives in Kimberley. Kim Reeves is the president of the Four-Wheel Drive Association of BC and is a director with the Outdoor Recreation Council of BC. He has extensive experience leading volunteers in recreation site builds, relationship building with government, First Nations, and backcountry cleanup efforts. There's a gnarly story in the Stewardship Inspiration guide about some dirty diaper cleanup. That's just makes you realize what dedicated volunteers we're talking about here. Jackie Rasmussen is the executive director of the Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society. The society works with partners, including outdoor recreation groups, to manage invasive species. And the society educates the public about preventing the spread of the invasives. This is really important work. The provincial government estimates invasive species cost the agriculture and forestry industries alone $7.5 billion in lost revenue every year. And finally, Robin Hutchins is the Education and Stewardship Communication Officer for the BC Marine Trail. It's a nonprofit working with First Nations to build and protect a network of marine trails, campsites, and safe harbors throughout the BC coast. Their work includes shoreline cleanups, removing invasive species, building campsites. Just about everything they do has a stewardship component. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to turn the floor over to our panelists. I'll start with Kevin. Can you tell us a little bit about the work about your work and how important outdoor groups are to the sustainability of rec sites and trails?
Yeah, thanks. Certainly, I think and I have a short slide deck to show, and to see that we are volunteer driven. The Recreation Sites and Trails Branch, we work for the Ministry of Environment with BC Parks. Our superpower, if you will, is the ability to make agreements and engage with community organizations locally and regionally, such as those folks that will be on this call, members of ORC and others. And so a custom fit of stewardship, if you will, at a community level. And that's and if it weren't for that ability, we wouldn't be able to meet the need at all, in terms of public recreation out there that we're managing. Yeah, there you go.
Excellent. Well, yeah, go ahead and share your presentation there. Let's take it away.
All right. Tell me if that's working for you. You see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Okay, so today, speaking for recreation sites and trails on the topic of stewardship generally, super high level. I'll move through a few slides really quickly, and so I don't take up too much time. But I want to acknowledge with gratitude that I'm coming from Cranbrook today, the traditional lands of the Ktunaxa peoples. And quickly, just to put it in context, from where I'm coming from, here's the Recreation Sites and Trails BC branch by the numbers. I am the manager for the Southern Interior East region in the Kootenays and Okanagan. And this is what the program on the ground looks like. So managed facilities, if you will, what we would call our operational program. And we definitely take a stewardship lens on managing the stuff on the ground. And like I said, a lot of that is volunteer driven through our community partnerships. But there's also a strategic dimension, what I would call strategic stewardship. And we get up to that stuff too. It's about planning and stewardship initiatives, inventories, et cetera, and working with the other agencies in the ministries around stewardship on the broader land base. So stewardship, there's a few, bullets there about how I think that our branch in engaging with our partners affect stewardship or take the stewardship lens. Definitely we meet groups where we find them. So whether it be very small town BC, small clubs, doing small things, and then on the other end of the spectrum, really big sophisticated groups with lots of capacity. And, so we're able to kind of custom fit our engagement with community groups. Stewardship is probably the predominant lens we use. We do manage for public safety, environmental values, recreation experience, but managing for the environment seems to take care of a lot of the other values that we manage for. And youth engagement, I have that listed. I think that to me is kind of a magic ingredient of stewardship. I mean, we were just talking earlier about the need to engage youth and educate youth on environmental awareness education. So these are our stewards of tomorrow. And Recreation Sites and Trails BC actually has a strategic goal around this. Recreation resource management is sustainable and forward-looking. And these are our three broad mandates. To give you a sense of what the branch is, the architecture, if you will, of the branch and the purpose. I've highlighted the first and the third because I think they closely relate to stewardship, but also the second does as well. So I mentioned engaging with community groups, stewardship activities, managing the sites and trails. Also, I mentioned the strategic engagements with other agencies and the broader picture of public use on the land base. I think that stewardship can be described as conservation, and there's also a preservation aspect. At Recreation Sites and Trails BC, we definitely take sort of an integrated conservation approach, meaning managing the use on the ground. And so internally with other agencies and externally with our partners and stakeholders, it's a collaborative approach. And so our partnership agreements, we have over 400, I think, approximately 400 in the province. And like I said, they could be very small groups or very large groups. Scale is variable too. Specifically with First Nations, lately we've been making extra efforts to find opportunities to engage with First Nation governments and organizations, whether that be at a band level, at a nation level, at an alliance level. Another one of the strategic goals for Recreation Sites and Trails is that recreation management supports reconciliation and stronger relationships with Indigenous peoples. So we are looking for those opportunities. But more broadly, we engage with typically with the list of different types of organizations shown there. And like I said, we find them where they're at. The ways that we can support partners through these agreements are providing legitimacy of the campsite or trail network, supporting grants, providing facilities, signage, materials, supplies, a little bit of subsidy, particularly seed money for external grants. We manage public safety. There's certain things that we don't want the partnership or the partner group to be responsible for. Those agreements, by the way, and I am aware that a lot of people on the call are probably quite aware of this, but they come with some insurance to protect the groups from liability associated with the maintenance that they do. And those agreements also come with standards and guidelines and requirements. And it's a good way to grow the relationship together with the community and leverage our strengths and find those opportunities to, I guess, enable the community vision. And lastly, the land management approach, as I would define it, that we take is focused. And this is really important. And it's kind of a de facto stewardship filter, if you will. We are managing people where we find them, but ideally in managed areas, sites and trails. So place-based management, I call that. And we're not managing dispersed, and we're not wanting to encourage dispersed activities. So it is like, let's add value to a place so people congregate there and inherently have a lower footprint on the land. And we can add value to the site and trail level with the communities. And so when I'm thinking of stewardship, also I'm thinking of stewardship values, like, at the province here, we're concerned with cumulative effects, limiting fragmentation, protecting habitat, protecting biodiversity. So whether it be at an operational level on the ground, or strategically in our partners, relationships, and in our planning, really trying to take that lens on things. So there you go. That's my quick summary for you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Just touching on that, on some of that last point there. I mean, when you're looking to engage in a club, or a group is looking to engage with you, I mean, what's that first step? Is it reaching out to your sort of your rec officers in the community?
That would be the ideal first step, yeah. And a lot of these groups kind of have a sense of who that person is already. But in this region, I mean, we're spread thin across the ground, right? And in this region, we have staff in Vermeer, Cranbrook, Nelson, Vernon, and Revelstoke. So a bit more of a problem for those communities that don't actually have an office and some staff there. But we serve them too. So I would reach out, find the recreation officer, and start the conversation.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, well, let's move on to the Four Wheel Drive Association and Kim Reeves. Kim, can you tell us a bit about what motivates your members to get involved in projects and do some of the stewardship jobs that you guys get into? Oh, you're still on mute there, Kim.
Pardon me. What motivates our members is doing good things for people you'll never meet, and just paying it forward. I believe that's what motivates us.
All right. Well, yeah. So I think you're going to share some slides there with your website and tell us a little bit about the group. So go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Kim Reeves, and I'm the president of the Four Wheel Drive Association of BC. The Four Wheel Drive Association of BC was formed in 1974 and officially registered in 1977. We currently have around 4,000 paid members, a social media reach approaching 100,000, and hundreds of active volunteers. Our Constitution states, promote and maintain the natural ecology of our environment and promote multiple land use and reasonable access to the backcountry and wild lands for 4x4 recreation and other uses. For 46 years, stewardship of our environment has been baked into our association. In fact, most recreationists utilize some type of four-wheel drive vehicle to access their trailheads, or a Subaru. For decades, we have entered into partnership agreements with Recreation Sites and Trails BC, and one we have with BC Parks to maintain wilderness recreation sites. Currently in our portfolio, we have 23 rec sites, 4 fire towers, 2 trails, 1 ORV park, and 1 education and training area. One of the fire towers we have is in joint partnership agreement with the Logan Lake ATV Club. So we're working together with other recreationists. In 2011, we built a log shelter at Hale Creek on Harrison Lake that has been extremely popular, seeing thousands of visits per year. This led us to be asked to build a replica fire tower in 2012 at Nahatlatch near Boston Bar. This build was to celebrate 100 years of the BC Forest Service. This rebuilt tower was exceptionally well cared for, receiving scrape and paint every 3 years or so. And the tower has received thousands of visits over the decade since it was built. Unfortunately, this tower burned this year in the Cookhippie Creek fire. As sad as this was, we quickly realized that the real story was our volunteers that built this tower and their will to build it again. Hundreds of inspired people offered to assist in the rebuild in the weeks following this fire. This is inspiration. A big part of rec site maintenance is cleaning outhouses, cleaning up garbage, painting outhouses and tables and the like. Over the years with our maintenance, we have noticed a drop in the garbage left behind. Our organization is a tread lightly partner, and we promote pack it in, pack it out heavily online, in print, and on signage at our rec sites. We believe that this volunteer stewardship spreads the ownership of a rec site, and consequently, they're cared for better by everyone who uses them. The Four Wheel Drive Association of BC has hosted trail cleanups since our founding on pretty much every Forest Service road in the Lower Mainland at one time or another, as well as around the province. In our experience, Due to urban pressure, there are 6 types of garbage found on Forest Service roads. There's residential garbage, there's commercial waste, there's lawn and garden or invasives, there's shooting waste, there's grow up, not so much anymore, and meth lab, and then there's the party waste. We argue that most of this can be alleviated by removing the disincentive to dump at a transfer station and by spreading the cost to operate these transfer stations across the residential and developmental tax bases, rather than a single fee at the time of dumping. Notable cleanups that we've held annually were the West Stave and East Stave cleanups, where over 20 years we removed over 300 tons of garbage and steel. A note about garbage. It is not left by recreationists. I have yet to meet a single recreationist who enjoys seeing the sight of garbage in the front country. In fact, it always disgusts people. That's why we mitigate it. Our cleanups have moved to a flash mob style where someone discovers garbage mess, posts it on our Facebook pages, lamenting this behavior, and we immediately recruit this person to lead a cleanup event. We post the event, we gather volunteers, and we outfit them with garbage bags, pickers, dumping permits, transport, and the like. And in mere days, that pile of garbage is gone. This is inspiring. This leads me to our app that we are developing. This app was designed originally to gather gate info, as these are the bane of our existence. We are mapping the entire province of gate locations and statuses. How this works is that a member will encounter a gate, open the app, take a picture of the gate, and the app geolocates the gate, which, as soon as they get cell service, is now available to our other members. We're adding garbage to the app, as well as other things like invasive species, historical sites, trails and ratings, viewpoints, and other areas of interest. In the future, we intend to partner with other organizations, such as the Invasive Species Council of BC, and crowdsource our members both in finding invasives and tagging them, and also in eradicating them with proper technique. The opportunities are endless. Another pillar of our association is the Wheelers of Tomorrow program, where we take kids 4x4ing, camping, picnicking, and other events. We have worked with burnfund.org and child burn survivors, big brothers and big sisters over the years. For me, I was at a kids event where we 4x4'd to one of our rec sites and played on the beach on Harrison Lake. Kids were meeting and playing with each other as were the adults. While barbecuing, I noticed some kids building a raft. I could not remember the last time I'd seen that. Cooking and observing the kids and the adults, I realized that I hadn't seen a phone all day in someone's hand. It occurred to me that we need to measure the non-economic value of our volunteer work because it was there on everyone's faces. We knew we were making an impact. It's easy to measure economic value, but non-economic value is tough. And I think the only way to do so is in story form. These events are remembered for a lifetime. This is inspirational. We also have an off-road driver and recovery training program that we rebuilt in 2018. Since then, we've trained over 400 people in one-day courses in off-road driving and off-road recovery, assisting them in becoming a little smarter and a little safer operating their 4x4 in the front and back country of BC and other provinces and states. We also just completed a Train the Trainer event where we trained an additional 20 trainers over a 5-day course. These new trainers will help us expand our course offerings in the coming years as we struggle to meet the demand for these courses. In these areas, we guide. So thank you for inviting us to participate in this panel discussion, and I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kim. That was great. That app, where is it at right now? Is it something people can download yet, or is it still sort of in process?
It's not available for download yet. We're moving into this third phase where we're adding the additional features. So it's really a gate app right now, but we're moving into the other aspects. I know we talked with Jackie and some other folks about this app at the Responsible Recreation Conference earlier in the year.
All right. And is just keeping track of your social or website the best way to kind of keep up to date on when that comes out?
Our website is probably the best place, as well as we have a strong presence on Facebook. So we have a large group there and exceptional following.
All right, excellent. That's exciting. Yeah, I live on Vancouver Island. We definitely have lots of gates here, so that's good to hear
Got
something
most
like
of the
that
map,
that'll
too.
come along. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Kim. Jackie, let's move to you. Invasive species, they're a massive and pervasive issue in the province. Tell us more about how you guys are getting involved in getting outdoor groups involved in helping eradicate them.
I've got quite a few examples, Ryan, so thank you. I'm wanting to move into my slideshow and give you some of those great examples. We've been involved with recreation groups for quite a long time, since we first were around, sort of around 2011. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. So taking action to prevent invasive species. Thank you very much for inviting me as well. And I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the St'át'imc. I'm grateful for our partnerships with the 6 Northern St'át'imc and 2 nation organizations. Like Ryan says, invasive species are present across the province, and I'd like to share some examples of how you can be part of protecting our unique ecosystems from their impacts. So just to start off, we'll do the quickest 101 possible here. What are invasive species? They're not from they're not from BC. They don't have any natural predators or diseases. Those got left behind from wherever they came from. And they establish aggressively. So in the case of plants, they produce a lot of seeds and they outcompete native species and they cause some sort of harm. So why are invasive species harmful? There are many types of harm that invasive species can do. We usually call them impacts. And this photo is showing the harm to the environment. Invasive plants can rapidly grow and create dense thickets. So when they die off, this turns into fuel that can increase the intensity of wildfire. So they also impact and harm wildlife by eliminating food sources and altering their habitat. And there's harm to humans. So invasive plants can contain harmful sap that cause burns to human skin. And of course, that can also impact infrastructure. So for instance, knotweed can crack concrete foundations. And this is a symbol for impacting recreation. And I'll show you some examples of how that impacts recreation in my talk. But lastly, they can also impact the economy. So what can you do? I'm going to start off by recommending things that you can personally do, and then I'm going to go into some collaborative efforts that are some examples. So first, I recommend that you learn to identify plants and animals. This can be extremely helpful when you're trying to identify if it is invasive or not. And I definitely recommend helpful apps like iNaturalist. When you're out and about, please report new infestations. It's also essential to learn key actions that you can take to prevent the spread, starting with Play Clean Go. So this Play Clean Go is a program aimed at recreationists across North America, and it has consistent messages, and they include remove plants and animals and mud from boots, gear, pets, and vehicles, clean your gear before entering and leaving a rec site, trail, etc., stay on designated trails and roads, and use local firewood and hay. Clean, Drain, Dry is the action that all boaters, fishers, and aquatic recreators should take with their gear. The invasive mussels attached to this boat prop can be transported in small amounts of water. This is why you must always clean, drain, and dry to prevent their establishment in BC. BC has inspection stations at the US-Canadian border and Alberta to keep invasive zebra and quagga mussels out of BC waters. Buy local, burn local. Firewood can carry a host of insects and diseases that might be common to one area in BC or another province, but not locally. So the message here is to source local wood for fires, whether you're camping, fishing, hunting, etc., to prevent the spread. So now I'm going to just say how you can get involved with stewardship projects. And besides following all these examples of best management practices that I've shown to you when you're recreating, there are many creative ways to work collaboratively with other groups. So in this case, I want to start with your local RESO. And what is that? That's a regional invasive species organization, like the Lillooet Regional Invasive Species Society. So you can find a not-for-profit or a regional government that is doing similar work to manage and prevent invasive species across BC. And a shout out to the Invasive Species Council and the great resources that they have on their website, especially to do with youth. So just to start us off, this is a program that is highlighted in the Outdoor Recreation Council's Stewardship Inspiration Guide. And this program started off as Adopt a Trail in 2018 by the Sea to Sky Invasive Species Council. And it invites Whistler residents to keep a section of Valley Trail free of invasive common burdock for the summer. It was renamed Banished Burdock in 2023 because it expanded the sites available for adoption to include burdock patches on public land. And in 2023, 13 parties signed up, nearly half were returning participants, and this included businesses. And the good news is that this program works. Each year, CISC sees more trail segments and patches reduced to monitoring only. This is where there's no visible growth of the weed, but CISC still asks people to keep an eye out through the season for burdock. So this program also helps the public to understand why burdock matters. And it's paramount in fostering stewardship. Over the last 2 years, they have spent a lot of time developing content for this public education. For more information, go to the website that's shown here. And today we're lucky to have Claudine Gautier here from the Sea to Sky that can answer your questions specifically after the talk. I just wanted to go through a few more things that our organization has done to work collaboratively with other groups. And for this example, this is the Lillooet Naturalists Club, and we co-hosted 4 weed pulls and then planting of native plants along local trails in Lillooet. This is an example of a collaboration that you can do with your biking association. The Lillooet Off-Road Cycling Association does trail cleanup and hosts a bike rodeo where kids get coloring books and stickers with the Play Clean Go theme. Trail inventory creates a baseline knowledge about where invasive species exist and where they can be removed. And partnering with a trail association like the Bridge River Valley Community Association will help keep trails weed-free and invasive plants out of the sensitive alpine ecosystems. Elrus has strong connections with our Statlian partners, and this offers opportunities to remove invasives and survey new areas. And this past year, we helped the Oakhamuk Gardens remove weeds and trained guardian crews from 5 different communities. If you have a riding club in your area, they're a great source of active volunteers. Elrus partnered with an elementary class and the Mile O Riding Club to remove invasives at their rodeo grounds. Here's an example from my colleague in the Okanagan in Similkameen Invasive Species Society from Lisa Scott. Oasis initiated and co-led an annual Earth Day celebration for 17 years in Summerland. The event occurs on the Sunday closest to Earth Day and is a 2-hour family-friendly stewardship event open to community members. The location is typically a municipal park or trail that could benefit from the removal of invasive plants and then planting of native species. And booths with information on water-wise gardening, species at risk, invasive species, and other environmental topics are on site as well. Just a few ideas for funding. Usually these events don't require a whole lot of funding, but it sure does help if you have some cash on hand to support the effort, especially for snacks for your volunteers. What has worked for Elrus is small grants from our local community fund, regional district, naturalist club, and donations. Reaching out to your local government representatives can help you understand what's available in your area. And I'll leave it there. So Kukstum Kalap is thank you from one person to more than one person in Stadtlium. And I appreciate being here today.
Thank you very much, Jackie. One quick question for you. So you mentioned a couple times there the idea of pulling the invasive species, removing them, and then planting native plants. So what's the tie there?
Basically, you're wanting to remove what's there and then put back what would be in the natural ecosystem. It not only creates the habitat that should be there for wildlife and our traditional uses, but it also creates the competition so that hopefully those plants that were removed, the invasives, don't come back.
All right, so it's sort of a two-pronged approach.
Absolutely. You have to have many tools in your toolkit when you're tackling invasives.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. We'll move on to Robin. Can you talk a little bit about how BC Marine Trail and stewardship kind of fit together within your mandate? Oh, you're still on mute there.
Did. Yeah, totally. I caught on. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, no, I'll pull up a slideshow here and talk a little bit about us, BC Marine Trails. And, a lot of what we do is related to stewardship. Our organization sort of has these pillars that we do our work around, but really they're all interwoven, and those are stewardship, First Nations engagement, and trail development. And so I'm just going to share my screen here for you guys so I get the slideshow. And pardon me, I'm just going to put it on presenter mode for you. Be a little bit better. Is that showing for you okay there, Ryan?
Not yet, no.
Oh, one sec. All right, there we go.
There we go.
Again. There we go, should be on presenter mode here. All right, yeah, so BC Marine Trails here. I'll just start off by mentioning that I am coming to you from Victoria, which is the beautiful traditional territories of the Lekwungen people, also known as the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nation. So yeah, I'm here in Oak Bay, and it's lovely. So yeah, BC Marine Trails, I am their stewardship, education, and communications coordinator. And sort of what I want to highlight here is just a big component of what we do here. And a lot of this presentation really goes a shout out to our volunteers, because what we do, we can't do without our volunteers. We are a volunteer organization with just 2 employees, myself and Cam. Cam does our First Nations engagement, and the rest is this wonderful board of volunteers, as well as all the other volunteers who help with our various projects. Just for example here, some of the stewardship work that we do here on the coast. And actually, you know what, there might be some people here who don't actually know what we are specifically. I'm just going to touch on that. If you look at that little map on the bottom there, it's a map of coastal BC. And essentially what we do is we provide a map for recreation purposes, people on the water, often paddlers, to essentially plan your trip and have safe harbor from place to place, campsites, to map out your trip and know that you have a place to land and a place to camp and what it's going to be like. And so on our website, as a member, if you go on, you have a map. You can use distancing tools to plan out your trip, and you can read a lot of information about the specific campsites and launch sites along your way. So it is a wonderful resource for recreating on the coast of BC. And we're able to maintain it and the information about it across the coast of BC, which is just huge because of our volunteers. And I'll get into that a little bit more, how that happens. But some of the other stewardship projects we do, just as an overview, we do a very large beach cleanup every year on Vargas Island in Clayoquot Sound. So in the past year, we removed over 16 spruce sacks of debris. Spruce sacks are just those massive, as you can see in the photo, sacks of debris from Vargas Island, which is a really popular paddling destination close to Tofino. We partner with organizations like Surf Riders for this. We work with the House It Outdoor School and invite the House It Out to come with us as well. We're going to be doing this again in May of this coming year. It's a wonderful trip. We paddle out, we're kayakers, and we surf land, and then we spend a few days and just great camaraderie collecting debris and organizing it so that what can be recycled will be recycled, and then what needs to go specifically to the landfill will. We participated in World Ocean Week, turning World Ocean Day into a whole week, collecting marine debris and encouraging our members and paddlers to do beach cleanups wherever they were along the coast throughout that week and to highlight it. We'll be doing that again this year, of course. We have an annual twice a year. We visit Gerald Island with a group of volunteers. And here we work with BC Parks to remove invasive species, specifically English ivy and some blackberry as well, Himalayan blackberry. And we just did this trip in April. It was my first time actually going out and doing it. It was amazing. The volunteers worked so hard. The most popular word that was said was, "It's so satisfying pulling that ivy, you know, and getting it out of there." And we've really made a difference on the island. You can see the endangered wood ferns are coming back. Access to various areas around the island is increasing. It's just a wonderful thing to see that's been happening over the years, clearing the ivy from Gerald Island, which is a short paddle from Nanaimo. And then additionally, we have site condition reports that get sent to us by our volunteers throughout the year, and I'll get into that as we go. So our site condition reporting, this is essentially what the information that we get from our volunteers that makes up our maps so that we can update the condition of the campsites along the coast for the public. And these site condition reports are so important and quite easy for volunteers to do. Essentially, if you are at a campsite or a place along the coast, you can use our site condition report through our Survey 123 app and input the data. There's some really easy prompts and questions to answer about the landing site, any danger, fallen trees, garbage, anything like that. And if you want, you could take a photo and you submit it. It's quite a quick process, and it's really how we're able to do what we do with this site condition reporting by volunteers and paddlers up the coast. We encouraged folks to participate this past year by doing a contest. So we had Mustang Survival donate some prizes, and we had a lot of people, anyone who submitted a CR was able to be entered in the contest. It was a great little event. All this data essentially just helps us create the map and keep things up to date. Another component that's really big of our stewardship is our code of conduct. So a lot of research and effort went into creating this code of conduct. I think it mirrors some of the things that have been said by other organizations that they really promote, such as sort of the leave no trace when you go out, not to disturb or take anything. You're probably, you are on sensitive lands that are First Nations traditional territory. We ask as people paddling on the ocean to have your campfires below the high tide line from multiple reasons, and our code of conduct gets into the details of that, and other components as well. This is sort of a short form version that you're seeing here, and we have a longer version explaining all the details of this on our website. And we offer workshops and presentations on our code of conduct. We're working to get this into classrooms with guide outfitters, with colleges who are teaching guiding programs as well. And if anyone does see this and is interested in more information or presentation about it, just get in touch with me, my email that's on the bottom there. So our BC Code of Conduct, the Marine Trails Code of Conduct, is interwoven with our First Nations engagement. This is one of my favorite things that we've done recently. Cam worked with the Mamalilakula to create a storyboard, which if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see a bunch of posts about this, and you'll be able to link to the storyboard. But essentially, the Mamalilakula were asking to respectfully recreate in their territory what they saw as respectful, what they see as respectful paddling in their territory and visitation. And within that, our code of conduct was sort of adopted into that and promoted, as well as educating people about things like middens and clam gardens and how not to disrupt these really important cultural sites. So our stewardship is interwoven with our First Nations engagement. A big component as well here is our BC Marine Trust coastal caretakers. So to sort of encourage volunteers to sort of take ownership of this opportunity to report on the state of the coast and to be part of BC Marine Trails, you can sign up to become a coastal caretaker. So you can be an individual or a group, and essentially you're giving voice to the coast, which is visiting coastal sites, you're observing human impacts, you're interacting maybe with other visitors, you might be tidying up the site a little bit, and then you're sharing your data with us, whatever you did and experienced through that site condition reporting tool that is our Marine 123 app. These coastal caretakers are really valuable and really important, and we're so grateful to have them. And then they often get to participate in extra little stewardship projects, such as one we're doing with BC Parks Foundation at West Bolinas Island near Nanaimo. So if you're interested, if you want to sign on as a coastal caretaker, you just go to our website, you go to our Protecting Our Coast link, and there's a volunteer with us section, so you can learn more there and sign on. And so what you're doing essentially does make a difference. This is just a little recap of the site condition reporting that we ask coastal caretakers to do on a volunteer basis with our Survey 123 app. And so you can see these are all dots of where we've got information from the coast of some really remote regions that we just wouldn't know. And this information is so wonderful because we get to share it with BC Parks and First Nations and other partner groups, and it's really incredibly valuable. Well, thanks to anyone who wants to do a site condition report. And again, so just kind of bringing it home here, if you're interested, you're welcome to join us as a coastal caretaker or as just a person who wants to do a site condition report, or if you're interested in any one of our stewardship events that we do, such as Vargas Island or Gerald Island. And so another little thing here is that graphic you can see there, that is a sticker that we've created. It's waterproof. You can go on your kayak. It has a QR code that you can scan and look at what our code of conduct is, and just reminds you of how to respectfully visit these sites throughout our coast of BC. And yeah, just essentially thank you to our volunteers. We have 25,000 kilometers of coastline to cover for making a connective map of safe paddling throughout the coast, and we cannot really have eyes on this area without our volunteers. So what we do and all the stewardship we do is because of people who join in and share what they see and experience on our coast. So thank you to them, and if you're interested, just get in touch and we can certainly direct you to how you can help out. And that's about it for me.
Thank you, Robin. The caretaker program, is that like people are just approaching you, or do you go out and try and kind of recruit some people that you know are, you know, active and out there a lot?
Yeah, so essentially we have quite a large membership base. So our map that I described at the beginning there is a public view, like a public map, but then there's another layer of information that you can access if you become a BCMT member, which is essentially a $30 annual fee, and that just helps to fund our various projects. And that because of those members, we already are following through social media, we were able to just do a call out and say, hey, we've created the coastal caretakers, do you want to sign on? Essentially, you're just saying that, hey, when I go out and paddle, I'm going to think about taking note of what I see and experience in these sites and reporting back to BC Marine Trails so that that information can go back into the membership map that I benefit from. So we really, did a call out and got a great response. And it actually really did increase the number of SCRs we got. There's a time we only got 70 SCRs in a year. Then we got up to 200 in the past year. We've gotten over 300 this year. So it is increasing the number of reporting we're getting, over 300 reports now is huge. So, yeah.
And has the number of caretakers kind of increased with that, or is it like the caretakers are doing more?
So the caretakers has only been around for a year. So this is our first year with the caretakers, and it definitely did boost the number of SCRs we got. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Excellent. All right. Well, thanks to all the panelists. Let's move on to the kind of the Q&A portion of the webinar. Anybody that wants to add questions, we have a few that have rolled in, but feel free to pop any more into that Q&A button, and we'll do our best here. So before the webinar started, we had a few people asking about how to engage their communities in stewardship activities. So, what are some advice that some of you guys are out there? Jackie, Kim, Robin, any of you can weigh in on this. What are some of the things that you found as especially effective for sort of engaging members and other groups or whatever it is to sort of get involved in individual projects or just in general? Maybe Robin, you can start there since you're still up.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I was thinking about this question earlier, and in terms of a way that's really something that's really beneficial for the stewardship work that we do, and that tends to bring in more people that we as just a single organization won't reach on our own, is I find partnerships are incredibly important to us, and we really value those. Our partnerships with especially local First Nations, like for example, our stewardship project on Vargas Island, we partner, we reach out to the Howsett First Nation, as well as we reach out to Surfrider in the local area. So those reaching out and having those partnerships, they themselves, will come and participate, but they also have a broader reach, right? So rather than us just reaching out to our little network, it's another community reaching out to their network, and it's just bigger, and just it really can bring more people in and get the word out. Those partnerships are so valuable, and in this time of reconciliation, it's really important to us having those First Nation partnerships, and especially because we are working in those traditional territories, and then just that helps us to really build our volunteer network. It just grows from there, and really keeping track of who's volunteered with you and remembering to reach out to those same volunteers, because they are often keen to come back and often bring a friend.
Great tips. Kim, what about you? What are some of the things that the Four-Wheel Drive Association has found really effective at getting those volunteers to come out?
Well, when I was looking at that question, Ryan, I was reflecting back over, I've been president of the association now for 15 years, and we've gone through various stages of organizational growth and member growth and volunteer growth. So it really depends on what stage the particular organization is at. So if you're a smaller organization, an important thing is to, one, don't bite off more than you can chew. And two is, when you plan an event, organize and complete it to be reasonably successful. And if you can repeat that, you'll grow, because they'll experience the success and the euphoria of making a real difference in the environment that they're in, whether it's a cleanup or a build or a maintenance event or what have you. And then choose projects that are meaningful to the people in your organization. So know who your members are, who your volunteers are. And for us, it is, beautiful places, it's kids, it's education, and garbage. It's getting garbage out of there to keep the places beautiful, because, same would go, I guess, with invasives. You want to see the natural environment, because that's why we're getting out in the backcountry.
Nice. Yeah, isn't that ever true? They're the beautiful places, and making them beautiful again, I think, is really a powerful one for people.
Well, big job of volunteers is mitigation, right?
Yeah. Jackie, did you have anything to add there?
Kim and Robin put it so well. I just want to just reiterate the fact that meeting people where they're at and really finding out what they're doing. We've hosted events and done things like that, but it really means going to where our partners are. And I couldn't be like, we're such a small organization, but we really make such a bigger impact because we have those partnerships that are out there. So finding out what the groups are doing. So just like the bike rodeo example. So instead of like creating something completely new for youth and including bikes, well, we just go to the bike rodeo and then, do the outreach that is there. So it really, makes the effort and the coordination a lot easier because you have support to coordinate that, because that's the other part of it, is the actual coordination time, and being able to collaborate with another group means that coordination time, many hands make light work.
Yeah. Kevin, have you seen anything from some of the groups that that have worked with rec sites and trails that you were, pretty impressed with?
In terms of stewardship approaches, Ryan?
Yeah, maybe motivating volunteers, bringing volunteers, getting people out.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to speak to, because of course we're just on the
Yeah.
receiving end of all these applications and engagements with groups. And so I personally don't actually do much to encourage them to increase membership. But having said that, we work together, and to the degree that we're successful in those partnerships and doing unique, cool stuff, I think that protecting the environment and supporting stewardship principles that way, I think that inherently it's attracting more interest. And I think it's a very common thing with clubs to need and want younger people to get involved. And maybe that's a bit more of a common angle to take to recruit more young people. Anyway, that's my hope, but I honestly don't really go there because I'm not in a group. We just deal with the groups that exist.
Yeah. All right. I'll stick with you for a second here, Kevin. There was a question earlier. Someone was asking about the balance between commercial interests or commercial organizations operating on recreation sites and trails, and then the impact they have, and then the balance with the general public. I mean, from what I've learned in the past, a lot of those commercial groups, they do reinvest in a lot of the sites that they operate on. Is that not correct? There's sort of a balance there where they take on a stewardship role for the benefits they're getting. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. So yeah, the way it works with recreation sites and trails is it's kind of a net zero thing, right? Where there's investment in the site and trail, but these are not for profit groups. And so all the investment goes to on the ground, right? And and a couple of things I wanted to add to this discussion around tips for successful stewardship projects is more and more we are encouraging those groups to use the same piece of ground. Stop looking for a new place to put a trail, because it's getting harder and harder to find new areas that don't have a lot of competing or incompatible uses and other interests. And so reusing the same, rebuild the trail instead of building a new one, right? And adding value and adding quality and back to what I was saying before about people, us trying to manage people more intensively in place to inherently protect wild spaces adjacent is one principle that I use, right? But specifically on funding, my advice there with stewardship projects would be to encourage groups to phase those projects. I think that it's probably a true statement for all groups across that spectrum of size and capacity, that there's variable capacity, and the vision may change over, from one day to, 5 or 10 years from then, and so that is my recommendation, is to compartmentalize your projects so that we can manage them adaptively and don't bite off too much, because volunteer burnouts it's a big thing, right? A lot of these groups get a lot of money and they're hard pressed to spend it responsibly. So that'd be my advice, bite-sized pieces. And then, when you do get a grant, those funders want to be part of your success over time. So, I think that it's a good approach to have a phase one, to execute that, and then to make another application later for phase two within the broader vision that they defined already.
All right. Someone's asking here a little bit about First Nations. There was a question I was going to kind of put out there as well. I mean, I think how can working with First Nations reconciliation sort of efforts be part of stewardship? I know that a few of you have worked on this. I mean, maybe Kevin, you could kick that off, just being from that provincial overview sort of idea of how important is it for these stewardship efforts to sort of be in consultation and with First Nations in the area.
Trying to hit the unmute, and I just did type in a quick answer to that one. I think there's a great opportunity to involve First Nations in stewardship projects. Looking back at the question, I think that it was around, is there an opportunity? Is that, I think it's pretty compatible. Those, First Nation groups, I think there's a shared vision around stewardship. And in my answer there, I specifically mentioned traditional ecological knowledge that I think is a bit of a missing ingredient. There's a lot of specialists in government and land managers and decision makers, but that is a bit of a more holistic approach. And I think that there's a First Nation can definitely augment a stewardship project with the specific knowledge of the land that they can bring, right? So to me, it works very well. I mean, basically, like I said earlier about finding partners where they're at, my experience with talking to First Nation groups is stewardship, protection of environmental values on the land is a common interest. So to me, it represents a great opportunity.
Robin, maybe you could weigh in as well. I know that, like you mentioned, that BC Marine Trails has really tightly integrated efforts when it works on, putting new sites on its mapping with First Nations. So what's your experience been?
Yeah, so I don't think I actually mentioned this, which is it's a huge component of what we do. Is an entire pillar of what we do is to do First Nations engagement. Our other employee is specifically employed to do this. We have a large number of First Nations who make up the coast of BC, and our goal really is to engage with all those who want to so when we have sites on our map, our goal is to go to the local First Nations and say, hey, do you want this site on the map? Do you approve us going to this site and recreating here? Or is there a reason we shouldn't because there's cultural sensitivities there, or perhaps an old village site or something that you're worried would get destroyed or ruined? What do you think? And if they say, no, we don't really want you going there because this certain cultural infrastructure is there, we will then engage and ask, is there another site that you suggest? Because one thing that is important for us too is that there is continuation of safe sites, so distances aren't too far apart. So we really do work with the nations with what we do. It's so very important that our maps reflect reconciliation, and we're not just creating a map that is telling you to go places that really wouldn't be within the best interest of the local First Nation. And to that end, we are then able to do things like we did with the Mamalulakula, where we were able to create an entire story map, which sort of tells the story of the Mamalulakula and what some significant cultural sites are, what they look like, how to avoid damaging a midden, and then weave in our code of conduct as well. So it really marries together really well. And for the most part, we've had really good interaction, or we've had great interactions, but we when approaching a nation, there's often interest to work and engage with us and participate, which has just been really a privilege for us, and tons of opportunity there. I don't think we'd want to do what we do without engaging with First Nations.
Nice. Jackie, Kim, do you want to add anything on there?
Definitely Elris we have been living the reconciliation word since we were created in 2011. So the Statlium were part of our board, still are, and we work basically in collaboration with them. So everything that we do, we get leadership and guidance from our Statlium Nation. And so this is basically the tie to the land and the impacts that invasive species can have are a threat to their way of life that's linked to the language. It's just so embedded into everything that our organization is part of. And so, I mean, just as one example out of so many that we do every year, but the Guardians from the Tikit Papetla, we collaborated with them on leave no trace signage and even brochures. So when the Guardians were out on the land doing monitoring and talking to people, or just interacting with the public, they were able to give this pamphlet to say, here, this is where you are right now. You're on the traditional unceded territory, and please leave no trace and play clean go. And it had all of those messages in that information that they're sharing with the people out on the land. So it's just part of what we do. And it's, when I was answering the question, I definitely suggested that there are already so many things that your local Indigenous community are already doing that is called stewardship by us, but for them, it's just living on the land and doing, the important cultural work they do. So you just have to find out what they're up to and see if there's an opportunity to volunteer or be part of that, because there's a lot of cool things going on. That's for sure.
Excellent. Earlier on, we were discussing the younger generation. I know there's lots of groups out there that struggle to find enough volunteers, and engaging young people is so important, as it always has been for moving forward. What are some things that you found have worked for sort of getting that younger generation interested and involved? Kim, you talked a little bit about those camping trips and four-wheel drive events. I mean, how do you sort of find those younger people? How are you reaching out to them and getting them into what you're doing?
Well, that's a good question. We were talking about this earlier, and when it comes to where, I guess first is the definition of younger people. Are we talking under 18? We're talking about 18 to 30? Are we talking, as I get older, younger seems not so young. We've had great success on social media, and we've also done well at trade shows and different events like that. So meeting, talking to, sharing what it is that we do. And again, it's also knowing what motivates people, what their passions are, how they want to be involved, and then reflecting that in our own events and things like that. So we do quite well with our demographics. And I would say from the late 20s through the 70s is what we cover. The magic demographic, 18 to 28, is more difficult to reach, but I think they're also trying to find their place in the world as well. They're getting educated, they're establishing their careers and things like that. So yeah, I hope that provides some of an answer.
Yeah. Anyone else there that Jackie, you want to jump in there?
Sure. We've been doing a lot more school engagement, and that really young, like K through 12. And it's been really fun. So we do meet them where they're at. So engaging them with some cool fun games, like maybe people have learned or seen things like Kahoot, but even just taking them out for a walk and then getting them to do like a plant ID game. The sense of competition even makes it so much funner for them to learn about these things. And then just the like Kim says, that sort of 18 to 30 is a little bit harder, but definitely we're reaching out through social media, and we've ventured into the world of TikTok, which has been fun and exciting. And I feel like we are gaining some ground, and there's other organizations and there's other conservation efforts out there that are joining us. So I think the more the merrier, and it will connect with people. So, and with that younger generation.
I think one thing that a lot of you have mentioned is that need to find projects that fit with your demographic, with the interests of the people that are involved in your group. I mean, that's an easy thing to say, but I imagine there's a little bit of nuance there to figuring out exactly what is going to kind of click. So does anyone have any advice there on how to kind of make those creative decisions about, you know, what project might work for your group?
Well, that's another tough question. Again, it's knowing what resonates with your membership. So like I said, beautiful places. People like to go on day trips and they like to enjoy the beauty of this province. So anything that you can do that's related to that will find volunteers. Same with kids. If you have kids programs, they'll bring, parents will bring their kids and themselves. And you discover a lot during those types of events, whether it's a picnic or a camp out or just a day trip. And on the education side, when you're dealing with the kids, you know, the same thing. So, and also it depends on the size of your organization, because your organization, we have a spectrum of interests in the four-wheel drive, who identifies with four-wheel drive recreation, which is pretty much people that participate in all recreation, but they identify the four-wheel drive side. So we have people that want to improve the condition of the backcountry. So they'll want to do the garbage pickups, or they want to deal with the invasive species. They'll want to improve a trail or what have you. So just knowing this, where your membership is at, the various things that they like to do, and then picking on those passions, right?
Robin, did you have you have any advice there?
Yeah, that's a tough one for me a little bit. Partly, I've only actually been with BC Marine Trail since July, so and I've been really fortunate to come into an organization that has a strong membership base. So our volunteer base is really strong too, and it seems like we have a really keen group. I mean, if you any of our trips where we're doing stewardship work, if there's a paddling component, that really attracts people. But I think one of the challenges that we need to sort of work on is engaging that younger crowd. We definitely have, part of it is a time commitment. I mean, when you're doing some of these trips that are multi-day that run into the week, you have people who go to work or go to school, and so our demographic tends to sometimes be those who are retired or can be away for a weekday. But yeah, my goal is to figure out how we can engage a younger crowd a little bit with our programs and what we do. And I'll be honest, I don't have a great answer right up front for this one. It's like I said, I have a great pool of people to work with who we, with a big network. It does, like I've said in the past, reaching out to our partners and our partnerships and seeing sort of what they're looking for, and then, like everyone's saying, meeting them where they're at. Like, what do you need? How can we make this possible? One thing that we're doing is we're specifically choosing the dates of our beach cleanup to go with dates that work for, like, a house at outdoor school, something that works for that community, to make it possible. So being flexible in those regards, I think is going to help us. But yeah, it's definitely a good question and a challenge I'm still working on.
Yeah. All right, Jackie or Kevin, did you have anything you wanted to weigh in there?
I can add a little bit. Well, indirectly, like it's so like what I was talking about earlier, where, you know, I'm really excited to try to make it so that we can engage youth more campsites and trails. So that's happening, and it's happening for a few reasons. Over the years, our efforts in the branch have moved more to the front country. That's where the want is. We're an application, you know, driven sort of organization. Because of the tourism values and the interest in economic diversification, a lot more development has happened in the front country. And at the same time, we are trying more and more to make things more accessible. And that's for an aging population, for, you know, everything from adaptive trails for disabled users, for seniors, But of course, increasing accessibility that way makes it more available for children too. So what we're finding is that these front country networks, whether it be dirt bike networks in Kelowna or mountain bike networks in so many other communities, attracting more families. And then of course the communities are developing programming to use those trail networks for kids, right? So over here in my region, it's super common where the communities are using these trail networks for like crazy. And there's all these youth programs going on because these trails are safer and better than trails ever before. And they're seen as a huge opportunity to the community. So it's really working. And so I would say by sort of investing a little bit more in the front country multi-use recreation resources, and also by trying to increase accessibility, it's had the effect of attracting more families and therefore more kids, right?
Excellent. All right, lots more we could just talk about, but unfortunately we're running out of time. So I'm just gonna wrap up the webinar here. Just by giving everybody a big thanks for coming. Really appreciate it. Everyone did for joining us, all the panelists as well for their time and energy. And I'd like to just remind everyone to hang on when we hang up here, just to answer a quick survey. This webinar is part of a monthly series. Our next topic is a perfect follow-up. It's how to attract and retain volunteers. So we touched on that, and we're going to try and dig into that a little deeper. The best way to stay informed about the webinar and everything else going on with the Outdoor Recreation Council is by subscribing to our newsletter. You can head over to the website orcbc.ca. Thanks again to everyone, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much. All right, I'm going to end the webinar here. Thanks again.